I bought a couple of these IKEA motion sensitive LED lights a while back. They're battery powered and they got a little magnetic clip, so you screw that to the wall, and this is magnetic so you can change the batteries and so on. And they've been quite useful in cupboards and things. So recently we decided we wanted some night lights, and these would be perfect because you can glue them anywhere. They're battery powered. So I put it as a night light. Problem is, it's motion sensitive, but it's got no light sensor, which means it turns on during the day, which is a bit silly, and also the LEDs are incredibly bright. So I had a look inside. I'll take it apart now, and inside it's quite neat. There's a circuit board which just comes out. It's got a couple of let's get those out. It's got a couple of battery contacts. The LEDs are on one side, a few capacitors, the PIR sensors there, and there's a chip. So what is that? It's a BISS 0001. Now, quite nicely, there's a data sheet for that online, and I found out from that that this IC, as well as being a PIR sensor driver, it's also got an input for an LDR, which means it'll only turn on when it's dark, which is exactly what I want. So I had a look on the board, and the pin is actually hardwired so that that feature's turned off. So what I'm going to have a go at doing is cutting the track on the board, putting a surface mount resistor and a light dependent resistor on the board. Well, the light dependent resistor will be poking through the case, and see whether I can turn this into a light sensitive, motion sensitive lamp. So I've only got two of these, and we wanted a few more than night lights than that. So I had a look on the IKEA site, and lo and behold, they don't sell them anymore. But fortunately, there's a thing called eBay, so I bought 8 white ones, which are probably going to be the ones I'm going to modify. And yeah, everything was fine until I noticed that if you look at the LEDs, they've shifted by 45 degrees. So I've fallen foul of this before. I'll take this one apart. I've had this problem before in that sometimes designs change, so I was hoping that it would be the same chip inside, and it is. So there's another BISS 0001 in there. It's a very similar circuit board, but if you look at it, it's actually smaller, so someone's optimised the design a bit. It's quite interesting because they've let's pop that out. What they've done is they've rotated the LEDs by 45 degrees, which means they've got the short dimension on the board rather than the long dimension. I'll take that off. That should come off. Yeah, that's just... So you can see it's a very similar design, but they've just reduced the amount of PCB that they're going to use, which will cut down on the costs. The circuit layout is also different, but that doesn't really bother me because I'm just going to find the pin and put a resistor on there. Probably, if there's room, I'll tombstone it, otherwise I'll put it somewhere. Find somewhere to put it. And the light dependent resistor, I'm planning on cutting a hole in the case so that we've got a light dependent resistor and a motion sensor poking through. I don't know, I might be able to mount that on the board if I can find somewhere that works for me. So I'm not going to use the blue ones, I think, because I've got 8 of these and we want quite a lot of night lights. I'll stick with the same layout for all the modified ones. So I'm going to have a look and see if I can work out a nice physical arrangement. It's a really simple circuit. I might try it out, just stick the components on there and check it does work before I go any further. And then I need to get the mechanical arrangement right. That could be a bit more tricky. We could put that in there. There's a couple of capacitors there on that nice space, so I think I may end up just running wires rather than mounting it on the board. I'll probably just cut a hole in the case, mount wires from the light dependent resistor down to the circuit board. It's only 2 wires, shouldn't be a problem. Right, so I think we'll stick some components on there and see if it works as a light sensitive, motion sensitive LED lamp. So this is the light with batteries in, just to show you the operation without any modification. So it's on, and then I'll let it time out. So the light's gone out now, and if I move, the sensor will pick me up and the light will go back on. So this is in fairly bright light here. I've got some light shining on it. So when it's modified, hopefully it'll only do that when all the lights are out. So let's have a quick modification. Okay, so the first attempt at getting an LDR on there didn't work, and things weren't going according to the data sheet. So I thought maybe pin 9, which is the pin that I need to put the LDR resistor network on, was actually routed past, which means there's tracks going in and out from it because it's attached to a supply rail in order to turn it off. So I've taken the chip off the board to have a look underneath, and yes, there are tracks in there which are going to be difficult to get to. So when I cut the track, I disabled some other parts of the circuitry. So I think the best thing to do is going to be to lift the pin, which will isolate pin 9, and then wire to that, which will leave all the rest of the circuitry as it is. So maybe I've destroyed this one. I'll put the chip back on at some point, see if it works, and put the tracks back and lift the pin. But I'm going to start on a fresh one because I want to do this on quite a few of these. I want to have a procedure that I can make sure is going to work, which means I want to start with a fresh one again at the moment. I mean, if I've overheated the chip or something, then it's a bit of a shame, but I could probably buy another BIS 001 on eBay or somewhere. So I'm going to just lift the pin. That ensures that it's isolated from the rest of the circuit, and the circuit that is there is unchanged. Right, so I've modified the light. There's a resistor there, I've lifted the pin, and there's an LDR here, and it's currently lit up with a lamp, so it's not turning on. So I wave in front of it, nothing happens. But if I turn the light off and then move, it comes on. So it does seem to be operating as a light sensitive, motion sensitive lamp now. It's pretty sensitive as well. I mean, that resistor is pointing down, it's in the shadow, the lamp's on, but that keeps it off, so it's only going to activate when it's really dark, which is exactly what I want. The only problem now, the other mod I wanted to do was just to dim the LEDs a bit, because this is pretty bright. It's a very bright light, and we don't really want something that bright, so I want to sort of cut the brightness. So I'm going to do that by changing the resistors that are in series with the LEDs. So hopefully that will dim them sufficiently. It might be a bit tricky finding the right value, and hopefully all the LEDs are pretty consistent. I don't really want to have to start tuning LEDs to get the right brightness. But if we dim that down a bit, I think that would be much better. Let's wait for it to go off. There we go, so it's gone off and it's not triggering, nothing at all. Let's try putting a bit more shadow on there. Nope, still nothing. So that's pretty sensitive, so that's exactly what I want. Turn the light out and it comes on. Right, okay, let's try dimming the LEDs. So I've increased the resistance on the LEDs and I found they were still pretty bright. So what I'm going to go with is an increased resistance on one LED and disconnect the others. And it's still pretty bright. If I turn the light off, I mean that's enough to see with as a night light. So we'll go with that. I can easily change them in the future, it's not really a problem, and that's quite a nice easy mod. So I think we're probably ready now to find some way of mounting the light dependent resistor. I think I'm just going to cut a hole in the case and glue the resistor there, but I need to find some way of physically getting the wires around there. Now there's a nice gap, actually. Now they've got a smaller PCB in there, there's a gap, so I'll have a look at that. I'll probably use my CNC machine to mill a little hole in there. That'll be neatest and pretty repeatable. So yeah, it works. So it's now dimmed down and it's light sensitive, and it's also a bit of a mess, but we'll tidy that up. Okay, so finally got the unit together with a LDR here. That's been machined out of my CNC machine, super glued in, and then inside, batteries out. Inside the LDR here, one wire pops over onto the circuit board, and it just so happens that there's a useful track, battery negative, which is one of the terminals that the LDR needs, right next to the position that I brought the LDR wires out. So flip this off. So one wire just solders straight on there, the other one I've had to run a wire across, and then between pin 9 and pin 11 I've got a 100k resistor. I've lifted the pin on pin 9, you've got to be a bit careful with that. You bend it around too many times and the leg falls off. So I've currently got 2 unusable boards. I'll just get another chip, got a couple of chips, and solder them back on and modify those. And that's it, just 100k resistor and an LDR, and you can just drill a hole for the LDR and epoxy it in if you wanted. The CNC was quite nice. It was it's not round, the LDR, it's actually got flats on it, so it's quite nice to have the exact shape there. And I'll screw that back together. There's a magnet on the back here which collects all the screws for you, which is fine until you want to put it back together again. And you've got screws all over the inside. You've got to keep the resistor fairly low profile. I've cut a bit of plastic off here, but I don't think it was necessary. I think it does actually clear that area, but there isn't a lot of room in there. So if we just pop that back on. Right, so the batteries are back in, and once I put the battery in, or drop it on the floor, once I put the battery in, you see that the light doesn't come on, and normally they do come on. So the only way of getting that on now is to turn the lights out and trigger it, but it's still a bit sensitive. I've got a laptop and some lights on over there, but I think if I cover it with my finger, that's given it enough darkness to trigger. So that now only turns on in the dark. So we'll see how we get on. I've taken all the series resistors for the LEDs out except for one, because as a night light it's pretty bright. I haven't changed the value of the resistor. We'll see how we get on with that. If it's still too bright, I'll increase the resistance. And there we go.